Hello and welcome. So in this video we're going to actually cover chapter 19 and chapter 20 of the LPIC 101 exam or CompTIA Linux. So in today's video we're going to talk about disk partitioning. What is disk partitioning and how we can actually create partition and format the partition, and also how to mount those created partitions. First, I want to begin with the disk geometry, how it looks like. So as you can see here on this window, so basically you can see that the disk consists of a couple of platters. Okay, this is the real image of the hard disk, as you can see. So we have platters, and then we have the read and write head. Okay, and actually it's attached to the boom, which moves the heads back and forth to read and write on the magnetic, okay, hard disks or platters. Okay, so on the single platter we have a track, which is this green circle around the platter, and then we have the small piece, as you can see. Small piece on the single track is called a sector, which is normally 512 megabytes. Okay, and then we have a couple of consecutive tracks on multiple hard disks on both sides. It's called cylinder, and a couple of cylinders actually make a partition. That's what is called a partition. Partition hard disk actually is dividing the hard disk into small pieces of file systems, and there are a couple of purposes why we need to partition the hard disk. Okay, so the advantages of partitioning the hard disk: it's ease of use, so it makes easy for us to recover a corrupted file system or an operating system installation. It increased the performance, so small file systems are more efficient. You could actually tune file systems as per application, such as log or cache files. Okay, it adds also a layer of security by separating the, for example, if you are installing or partitioning a hard disk on Linux operating system, you can actually separate the /root directory from the /home, which contains the home files or just normal files for users. Okay, from the file system that exists or reside on the /root directory. Okay. Also, it makes it easier to backup and recovery. Also, another advantage is stability and efficiency. So you increase the disk space efficiency by formatting the disk with actually various block sizes. And also the last advantage is testing. So when actually using partitions, you can actually run operating systems like Windows, Linux, and BSDs on a single hard disk, by creating those partitions. Okay, so let's actually talk about partitioning. So there are 3 steps of the process, okay, of making partitions. So the first thing is to divide the hard drive into small partitions. Then we need to format those partitions, and finally we need to mount the partitions on a file system or directory on Linux systems. I'm going to log into CentOS Linux, as you can see, and I'm going to clear this window, and then I'm going to show you a couple of commands to display and view the disk partitions. So we could use df-h sorry. So as you can see, we have a couple of file systems that are a couple of partitions. Okay, they're called also file systems, as you can see, file system column. And then we have the size of the file system. And as you can see, this is dev SDA3, which is partition on the device SDA, the size, and then used, okay, amount, and then available amount in gig. And then, as you can see, it's mounted on /root directory. This is the top, okay, directory of the 3 structure on Linux system. We have also dev SDA, which is the first partitions. Partitions actually are organized into SDA1 for the first partition, SDA2 the second partition, and so on. And as you can see, we have also a couple of virtual file systems that are mounted. For example, dev tmpfs, okay, it's mounted on /dev, which is a virtual directory that holds information about the hardware. So let's actually use ls and then dev /sd and then star everything, so we could actually view the list of physical along with their actually partitions. So as you can see, the dev SDA is a physical device with 3 partitions, SDA1, SDA2, and the SDA3. And then we have SDB, physical partition, and then we have 1 partition on the SDB1, as you can see, the first partition right there. And this disk, this physical disk, is not yet partitioned, as you can see right here. Okay, so let's actually create a partition. So to create partition, we need to use the sudo, and then we could use fdisk. Let's use -l to see what are the partition that we have on specific device. Let's say SDB in this case. I need to be a super user to do that. So as you can see, we have 2 partitions on this physical device. As you can see, the physical device is right here, dev SDB, which is 10 gig, okay, approximately 10 gig size, and we have 2 partitions on this specific hard disk. So 1 partition basically, okay, as you can see, the block size, the end, the start of the sectors, and so on. So now let's actually use sudo fdisk without options, okay, followed by the device name that we actually want to create partition on. So this command will actually take us to an interactive window, okay, using m, okay, to see all the available options that you can use. So I'm interested in, let's say, for example, if we want to delete one of the partitions on the SDB, we could use D option, delete a partition. So let's delete the first partition. I'm going to use D. And then it's asking me to delete partition number 2, okay, and I'm gonna hit enter, and then I'm gonna hit W, as you can see, to save, okay, write table to disk and exit, okay. If we don't type W, nothing will happen. So as you can see here, now if we recall the previous command, fsdisk -l and the physical device name, there we go. As you can see, the dev SDB2 is gone. Okay, so we can delete a partition. Now I'm going to show you how to create a partition with the fdisk command. To create a partition, we could actually use N. You could always use M to check what option you can use. It's asking me for the partition type, either primary or extended. The difference between primary partition and extended partition, primary partitions allows only 4, okay, partitions, okay, and the extended you could actually use more than 4 as primary and the rest as extended partitions. So I'm gonna actually hit enter. It will create a primary partition. In this case, it's asking me, it knows that there is 1 partition, so it will create the second partition named SDB2, in this case. Gonna hit enter. I'm gonna go with the default first sector, and then I'm gonna use here the size of the second partition. So let's say you wanna use 3 gig of this second partition plus 3 gig. You could use also plus 3000 megabyte MB capital for megabytes. And as you can see here, we can hit W to actually save and quit. And now if I will recall the same command, as you can see, we have the second partition created for me as dev sdb2. Okay, and the file system type, as you can see, it's Linux. You could actually, now it's time, after creating the partition, we need to format that specific partition. And to format a partition, let's say we want to format a partition. Before we format the partition, we could actually see the formatted partition using a command called, let's use lsblq. This is list, okay, list block device. So as you can see here, it gives us a cool and a nice output. So SDA physical device, and then we have 3 partitions, as you can see, on the SDA device. This is the primary hard disk that I'm booting actually Linux CentOS from. And then we have the SDB, the second physical partition, physical device that have only SDB1. Okay, right there, because SDB2 didn't appear here because it's not yet mounted. This is mounted as a swap, as you can see, and the second partition is not yet formatted. That's why it didn't actually appear right here. Okay, so to format a hard disk, we could use a command called mkfs. So sudo mkfs, okay, make file system. Could use -t option, and if we want to format it as FAT32, we could use vfat, okay, and then dev sdb2 right there. Okay, here we go, and let's recall the previous command. So still probably we get an error in here. So vfat dev sdb2 mkfs. It's not actually no such file or directory. mkfs fat. Okay, cool. So let's actually try to mount the SDB2 and see if it will appear with the lsblk command. So for mounting, or you could actually, I'm going to show you also. Let's say you want to format it with mkfs, and then minus, let's say, ntfs, and then dev sdb2. Okay, to actually format it as ntfs for Windows. Invalid blocks, dev sdb2 on device mkfs. So let's actually mount, after actually formatting the device, we can actually mount it using a mount command. So a mount command, you could actually issue mount. It will show you all the mounted file systems. For instance, if we look at the dev SDA1, as you can see, it's mounted on /boot, okay, on /boot. So dev SDA3 is mounted on the /root, the top directory on the 3 structure on Linux file system. The SDB1 and SDB2, they are not appearing in here because they are not actually yet mounted. So to mount a file system, we need to be super user and actually issue the mount command, mount, and then followed by, before we use the mount, we need to create, let's say, ls pwd. Let's actually go to, or let's sudo mk mkdir make directory on desktop, and let's name it actually hard disk. Okay, let's name it hard disk like this for the label. Here we go, command not found, mkdir, okay, let's mkdir desktop, and then let's name it hard disk. Command not found, mkdir, I'm actually using wrong command, mkdir, right there. So if we list the desktop right here, as you can see, and we have the hard disk, okay, as you can see we have the hard disk. Now we can mount the file system mount, and then the device name dev sdb2, okay, and then the where we actually wanna mount it, desktop and then hard disk. So dev sdb2 does not exist, so let's mount dev sdb1. Okay, it's a swap, so we cannot mount it. So I'm gonna go and actually try to format the device first. I think we issued a command. Let me recall the command again. So mkfs -t ntfs dev no such file or directory, ntfs mkfs -t. Could also use sudo mkfs -t, okay, and use vfat. Let's use vfat and dev sdb2. No such file or directory. We could use also sudo mkfs.fat, okay, .fat, and then dev sdb2 here. Okay, let's create a new one. Okay, let's create a new one. So sudo fdisk, and then let's use the dev sdb, then n. I'm going to create new primary partition. Here we go, and partition will be number 3 default, plus let's say 2 gig in here. Okay, and then w, and let's use fkfs minus, looking for the the fdisk command -ld. As you can see, we have 3 partitions right here. So let's make this third partition as let's format it as mkfs -t followed by ntfs, okay, and the dev sdb3, okay. It's not recognizing this. What's the problem in here? Okay, so format disk. Okay, mkfs -t option, and then let's actually ntfs, then the dev sdb, right, sdb3. It's not actually sdb1, sdb2, nothing there. So sudo fdisk -l dev /dev sdb right there. Okay, so we have 3 partitions. Let's use sudo mkfs -t. Let's use extended for file system type, then the dev sdb3 or 2 here. Okay, could not stat dev sdb2, no such file or directory. Okay, okay, let's let's use the sudo lsblk block sizes, and it could be a problem because we have the swap partition in here. So I'm gonna actually disk. Gonna use the sudo fdisk. I know that the command works basically. So -l and then dev sdb. So let's use fdisk on this, and I'm gonna delete the partition number 3 w. The same command, I'm going to delete partition number 2 w. So save, then sdb, and then d. Okay, let's use d here. Okay, no partition is defined yet. D here, and let's actually quit. Let's print the partitions. So no partitions are created now. So let's create a new one, primary, default 1, and plus, let's use 2 gigabytes of size on this partition. And then I'm going to actually use w2 save and sudo fdisk. Okay, dev, I mean -l, so you could use, or you could use the lsblq here, and we have one partition as a swap partition. Let's actually change the partition to, let's actually use sudo swap off, then a dev sdb1, okay, and sudo swap, okay, check, I think swap show, that's the command, swap show here, swap on show. So what are the devices that have the swap partition? So partition, the first partition that we created is no longer actually swap. Sudo, okay, so the SDB is not actually swap anymore. So we could use sudo mkfs dot, or let's use -t vfat. Okay, notice that you could use either -t or dot, okay, the partition or the file system type sdb1 here. Yes, it's created successfully, so we created as vfat. Let's actually create a new partition. So sudo and then fdisk followed by fdisk and dev sdb2 sdb right there, and then n for creating new partition, it's p default and then plus 3 gig in here, and then we're gonna save, and let's actually sudo mkfs, okay, and let's use -t ntfs file system dev sdb here, sdb2 right there, okay. So directory not found, so let's recall the command here. So we have sdb2 right there and is not yet formatted, so we could format it, so -t ntfs, or let's actually use the dot option, .ntfs. So we created a partition on the SDB1 as vfat. So now we can actually mount it. So to mount it, we could use sudo and then a mount, then a dev, okay, SDB1, and the mount point is actually the desktop and then hard disk. Here we go. So let's check something on the hard disk will happen. As you can see, Okay, 2.1. As you can see, the hard disk is mounted here, so this file system is useful, so you could copy paste into it, save data to it, and we could actually use it. So we'll demonstrate how to create partition, how to format a partition, and how to mount a partition. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to show you how to create a swap file system, so we could actually make the first partition, change it to, let's actually mount sudo and then mount to unmount a file system, dev sdb1. Let's mount this. As you can see, the file will disappear from the desktop because we unmount it. Now let's use sudo mkfs, okay, -t, okay, or let's actually use the mk command. So to make swap, we use mk swap, okay, and then the swap file where we're going to actually create the swap. So swap need an s in here, swap, and then let's say dev sdb1. Okay, so okay, signature and so on. So the swap is created. Now we need to turn on the swap using sudo swap, okay, on, and then the device sdb or partition sdb1. So the swap actually is turned on. Now let's use the swap on, and then let's use show command to check the swap file systems. As you can see, the SDB now is a type of a swap file system. The swap file system is used on the hard disk. You could use a space on the hard disk as random access memory or RAM. So when the system consumes all the resources, all the RAM available, it starts using a part of the hard disk as memory. I hope this has been informative for you, and I would like to thank you for viewing.